What's up, guys? Welcome to an all-new episode of Convos on the Pedicab. I am joined by a very special guest, State Representative for House District 2, Bryan Slaton. Before we get started, if you want to support the show, if you want to support what we do, if you want to support giving all sorts of people with all sorts of different point of views a voice to get meaningful conversation and discussion going on in a period where we're the most divided that we've ever been in history, please support my Patreon, patreon.com/pedicab. Anyway, we got State Rep Bryan Slaton. He's got the most important bill of the legislative session so far. Bryan, I'm going to let you tell us what it is.
Sure. So the name of the bill, it would rename a portion of I-35 from 4th Street to 11th Street to the Steve Adler Public Restroom Highway.
I think that's a great name for a great highway, Bryan.
Well, thank you. When I got here, talking to Democrats, Republicans, staffers, lobbyists, it didn't matter who I spoke to, a lady trying to lease an apartment. All everyone talked about was just the condition of Austin, with all the camping and everything and people using the restroom in public. That's all everyone talked about. People talking about changing where they live normally for session, where they went to, stopped going to their favorite restrooms. And so that helped us, get to the point where we filed the bill.
You know, and like I said, I think it's a great bill, and I really hope that it passes the committee, and I hope that this actually becomes into law. My thing about the homeless is that when it first started, my honest opinion was that I really didn't care all that much. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I didn't think it would have that much of an effect on me, right? But then COVID happens and lockdowns happen, and you see like these small businesses getting decimated, and then the city, all they do is just throw money at a homeless situation that anybody and their grandmother can see doesn't help homeless people in any capacity whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And then, you factor in that, I work downtown. I talk to a lot of people. I got a lot of friends, through jiu-jitsu. Even my own girlfriend, she feels uncomfortable parking her car downtown because of, the homeless stuff. And we don't go out to dinner as much. We don't do a lot of stuff that we could normally be doing. And the influx of, homeless people that are downtown is, plays a role in that, and that definitely plays a role in a lot of people going downtown and supporting our live music, supporting our bars, tipping our bartenders, ordering food, supporting our restaurants. You're a big small business guy. You have a financial services company that does does taxes and accounting for people who run small businesses. And when you have an influx of homeless people camping out left and right, people are less likely to frequent these small businesses, and then you factor that in with skyrocketing rent and skyrocketing property taxes. It's our city's stance on homelessness is it's not so much I feel unsafe and I don't want to see poverty and and the homelessness bothers me. No, it bothers me because the policy of enabling vagrancy is literally hurting working people and small business owners. And so that's why I think that you got to send a message that this is what these our neoliberal city council has turned our city into.
Yeah. Well, so I can tell you I've had a lot of experience, not a great deal with Austin, but growing up as a child and teenager, never went to big parties for spring break because my family and I would stay in our camper right next to the drum. And we would watch the high school state basketball tournament every spring break. And I saw Shaquille O'Neal play high school basketball, LaMarcus Aldridge. I mean, we saw all these people play when they were in high school. We would stay in our camper, and we would walk down to Serrano's on Red River, go to Schultz Beer Garden. We'd go all over the place as junior high and high school, and we would encounter homeless people, and we might give them a buck or something, we might not, and it was just something we dealt with, and we slept downtown in our camper in the parking lot next to what I call the drum, the gymnasium. But now people are talking about parking their car and walking, 50 yards, and they have, a homeless person yell at them, cuss at them, like you don't want to give them money, they kind of accost them, or just the overall smell of a sewer as you're walking. I was with some people who walked from one building to a restaurant we were going to eat at, and it was just overwhelming, the smell of a sewer. And if someone's trying to figure out where they want to go eat at night with their wife, is like, do we want to go to this place where we can just park, go in and eat and have a good time, or do we go to this place where who knows what's going to happen, right? So it puts small business owners at a disadvantage because it's competitive. You want people to choose your place over your competition because yours is better. Well, whenever you get put at a disadvantage because people don't even feel safe coming and using your business or service, that's not what it's intended. Government's not supposed to make it that hard to operate your business.
No, I agree. And then when you couple it with rising taxes and rising rents, why are you paying more money to use an inferior product? It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. It's totally preposterous. So that's my reason why I've gotten so against this whole homeless thing. It's not because you're legalizing camping. It's because of all these unintended consequences, or maybe they were intended, because Adler is so connected to it, real estate and development, and his real estate buddies can now buy up land at a cheaper price with all these small businesses going under, right? Or in the same real estate developers that gave tons of money to his campaign are now getting the contracts to build all the hotels to house the homeless. But that's the main reason why I'm bothered by it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's my take on it. But it's not because I feel unsafe. I personally, Brian, don't really feel that different from the amount of homeless people that are out here versus what it was in the past. It hasn't had that much of an effect on me personally. I feel like I'm a grown man. I can take care of myself, XYZ. But I'm not. There are a lot. I'm not the only person like myself. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There are plenty of other people who are who don't feel the way I feel. They're like, oh, I'm a female, or I'm a vulnerable, or I'm not I can't defend myself physically as well as you can, or whatever it is. And then it becomes scarier, and it gets a lot, and it definitely does deter people from wanting to come down here. And it's unfortunate. We have a culture that we got to keep and preserve, and it's you're using fake compassion to kill our culture.
Yeah. Well, you got people here that need genuine help, right? And I firmly believe it should be the church that helps take care of people, poor, widows, needy, and orphans. And I don't know if they are. I don't think they are anywhere, not just in Austin. I think they're really kind of taking a back seat. And so they're not. We have the government trying to step in, and there's people that do probably need help, but there's some people, it's just rampant drug use, and it's just there's a lot of violence, and it's unsafe for so many people.
Yeah, well, when you become a destination city for homelessness, which is what the policies are doing, you just start attracting people from all over the country to come here.
Mm-hmm.
And then it makes it harder for people that want help to actually get help. Mm-hmm. It's a big problem. But anyway, Brian, what's the status of this bill? That's the question we all want to know. What's the status of this? What's going on with this?
So the bill's been referred to the Transportation Committee, and we've told some local Austin people that if they really want to push this, because this is mainly an Austin issue, it's affected other cities, but not at the level it is in Austin. Dallas has this. I mean,
we're the only city that makes it legal.
Yes, y'all have it far worse than others. And I've kind of told local Austinites, if y'all want this, we will request the hearing and get it moving, but we need to make sure there's a lot of people wanting to testify.
Oh, no, I know plenty of people that would be down. I called Andrew right when I found this out, and I'm like, hey, Brian's got to get on my podcast, and also, how do we testify? How do we get this to actually happen? Yeah. Because, listen, man, as a pedicab, as somebody who does this job downtown in Austin, Texas, after these lockdowns, after the fact that when they defunded our police department, they gave no money to our service industry, and then you gave $60 million to homelessness, half of it's completely unaccounted for still to this day. The Statesman wrote an article about that. Listen, man, fuck this guy. And fuck the entire city council that's enabling this stuff and pretending to care about working people using fake progressivism and then stabbing us in the back and pretending like we don't exist. So yeah, like I would 100% testify on behalf of this. Like, and I know a lot of people that are pissed off and mad about what's happening that they would testify too. Like, so what's the status? What can we do? How do we like get this out to the public?
Yeah, the chairman has to call a hearing. So the way it works in the Texas House, chairmen are very powerful, and if it doesn't matter if one person supports it or 10,000. If that chairman never calls a hearing, it dies. So right now it's just waiting for him to call a hearing. That's what it's doing.
So we have to call the chairman, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the chairman's name and what's his phone number and how do we get a hold of him, Bryan?
I don't know his phone number, but he's the chairman of transportation. His name's Terry Canales, and you could let his office know that you support it. That's all you need to do. No, just tell him you support it.
So Terry Canales. So we like basically, if you want to change the name of I-35 between 4th and 11th Street to the Mayor Steve Adler Public Restroom Highway, which is what it is, thanks to yours truly, Mayor Steve Adler, then call Terry Canales. He's the head of what, transportation?
Mm-hmm.
He's the
chairman of transportation.
The chairman of transportation. Call Terry Canales if you want to change the name of I-35 from 4th and 11th and Red River to the Mayor Steve Adler Public Restroom Highway. That's got a nice ring to it. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's got a great ring. I mean, look, you know, people talk about keep Austin weird. Nothing says keep Austin weird than changing the name of I-35 to what it truly represents.
Yes, it would be an accurate representation.
I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, look, and when my mom and dad come to visit me, I'm like, listen, just get off the public restroom highway on 11th Street. We'll meet up. We'll go to the Quickie Pickie. It'll be great. You know, I think that it sends a strong message. I'm excited about this. Like, this is, like I said, this is the most important bill of the legislative session right here.
Well, like, especially for Austin. That's what I've had people tell me.
No, for America, Bryan.
Oh,
don't sell yourself short there. Don't sell yourself short. For America.
Well, we could agree to disagree. I think Austin, that's who I'm. Austinites are the ones really interested in this.
We
need
to
have a special
publicize
problem
this.
here. Yeah.
We have a very special problem, and we have a very special city, and we want to keep it a special city, and we don't want it to be special in the wrong way. We want it to be special in the right way and in the best way possible. You know, and then there's a fine line between punishing people for being homeless and enabling that shit and punishing the rest of us because we're a Woodstock for homeless people. Do you know what I mean? So like there is that fine line, and like our city crossed it. So like they leapt over that shit, and it's bad. It's not good. Anyway, I think we talked enough about the Steve Adler bill and the homelessness situation, but there's some other stuff I want to talk to you about. And you filed a bill to like to continue constructing the border wall.
Yes, I did.
So how does that work? Like, doesn't the federal government have like the final say in terms of like what gets built and what doesn't get built from that type of standpoint?
Well, if they fail to do their job and their responsibility, I believe the state of Texas has every right to take care of themselves. And so they already have a lot of the material for the wall. A lot of the contracts have already been done for the wall. And they started construction, and then the new administration stopped construction on that wall. Well, we have a problem at the border. I mean, the human trafficking and drug trafficking is terrible on the border. I mean, there was one report of a little girl who was at one of those detention centers, and she'd been raped 7 times in her journey across to get into America. And we can't let that happen. And a wall could be a big help in stopping. It's not 100% fixed. But this bill would do is this bill would just create a fund where we could put money in later, this session or whatever. We could put money in, but we would complete the wall. And then once we're finished, we would send the bill to the federal government, and we're going to charge them interest.
But you think the Biden administration is going to actually like pay that bill, or they're just going to laugh in your face if you
say
that? Like that's
two things. If they choose not to, that's why we're paying interest. At some point, we're charging them interest. So at some point when they pay, it works out best for Texas.
Or if they get a new president. But you think the new president's going to pay interest to the state of Texas? Like, do you think
Sure.
that's really going to happen?
Well, there's money already been allocated for this. The money's already there. That's what the Trump administration did. So the money's there. It's not like they don't have it. They have the money. If they choose not to pay, that's okay. We can charge them interest. And what I've told
so
people,
they already have money to do this project. They're
he
just
started.
not spending it. Okay.
He started working. Yeah, it's already there. And
so let me ask. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but let me ask another question. I know another thing that, like, I read like a little bit about your campaign and stuff, and one of the things that you really don't like is eminent domain, and utilities and companies using eminent domain to like take somebody's land away from them or mess with somebody's land or
Sure.
or devalue the property. Are you not worried that like building a border wall could like devalue somebody's land? Like that's
Well, let me point this out. There are instances where eminent domain is totally appropriate and ethical for the government to do. Like when they build highways and put in utility lines, they need to do that. And there are times it's okay. What the eminent domain I stopped, and I say there were so many people that helped me. There was a private company wanting to take people's land and put in a private toll road. And they didn't have the data that the road was even needed, and they didn't even have the documents.
Were they going to actually confiscate the land, or just run through?
They were going to They had to eminent domain was what they were going to do.
Okay.
And they didn't even file the paperwork with the state of Texas that would allow them to work in Hunt County, but they were getting special treatment to take people's land to put in a toll road. And both Republican and Democrat Party platforms in Texas are against toll roads for different reasons and different ways, but they're both against them. So we fought against that because it was a private company trying to do this and put in a tax on people. That's what a toll road is. So something like this, we have human trafficking is modern day slavery.
No,
I
agree.
I know. And if people, if
kids
kids and people are dying coming across the border, there's all kinds of horrors going on there. If we put up a wall, I think it could do more for the value of their property than cartels running rampant through their land.
Right, but what if you're like a farmer or a rancher or something, and putting up the border wall fucks with like the wildlife or something like that? Like that's.
Well, you don't want it to totally mess with wildlife, but you've got to, in my opinion, you put more value over the human life than you do over the wildlife. I mean,
no, I understand that, but people also use the wildlife for food.
Sure.
So,
sure.
like, how do you balance that? Like, how does that work, right? Because like, if I owned a chunk of land by like the Rio Grande Valley, right, and I was growing my own food and becoming a self-sustaining person, not trying to depend on the government, and then like a private company was trying to build a wall over my land that was going to mess with my like crop production or was going to interfere with like the wildlife on my land being able to like cohabitate, I'd be fucking pissed, dude. Like, so like what do you do to make sure that like those rights are protected, like, because I get where you're coming from. Like,
sure.
We got to have a safe border. I get it, man. Like, I'm not arguing with you on that, but like, how do you balance like protecting somebody's land to doing that? Right?
Yeah.
Like that's.
Yeah, well, you got to look at what is actually going on. The people that are there have land on the border. I've had people contact me. They have family that has land, and they're begging for the wall because things are different. Used to, I had people telling me, I live in Corpus Christi for a while, and they would tell me they had land down by the border, and in their home down there, the little ranch house or whatever, they would leave food on the table. They would leave, stuff in the cabinets, but they would just put some crackers and whatever on the table. And people that passed through would just take the stuff on the table and then move on. It was just kind of a custom. Now you've got people taking over. You got them demanding. They're coming in the house. They're taking everything, tearing up the house. It's just kind of what's happened here in Austin. It's just a different mentality, like how the homeless are different, a little bit more aggressive now. You have how they're treating the people on the border is a little different now. I've had people calling that live there wanting the wall, and they got land or their family has land there. But of course, you need to hear the people out, but it probably doesn't take too much traffic from the cartels through your property where you want something to change.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I get that. I'm glad that you explained that to me.
Yeah.
Next question though, where can I go personally? Because I want to see firsthand what's going on at the border, so I can make an accurate assumption and not base it on what I see on like the news or based on Twitter or social media or based on like a biased outlet. Where can I go to actually get a good like view as to what's going on?
I would, if the problem's as bad as they're saying, where it's record numbers coming across, a surge like we've never seen. Pick any place. Go to Eagle Pass. Go to Laredo. Go down to McAllen. Go to El Paso. I'm guessing you're going to see it all over.
So just literally go go like pitch a tent or get an Airbnb and just stay there for a couple days and see what's going on and like ask questions? Like where could like specifically what locations would be the best places to go in those areas?
It is so dangerous down there. I wouldn't recommend doing that. It is so dangerous. So when you go down there and ask questions, that's up to anyone that would want to do that. But the violence and threat of violence is so serious. If you heard Representative Henry Cuellar, Democrat, and the mayor of Mexico, the things they were saying about what's happening, how there's this network of criminal activity, and people are afraid to let their kids go outside and play. So I wouldn't actually. It's that dangerous. I wouldn't.
You wouldn't even recommend going there.
If you want to, that's up to each person, of course. You have the freedom to go. But I'm hearing the violence and the threat of violence is so serious, I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay. Well, I just want to know. I want to see what's going on and get a. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, when you're going to document stuff or make statements, you want these statements to be as accurate as possible. So that's kind of why I was asking about that. Mm-hmm. But we're talking about eminent domain still, right? Mm-hmm. What was your take on the Permian Highway pipeline? Because you weren't in office when this happened.
Yeah. You have to remind me what the Permian Highway.
So Kinder Morgan built. I think they already succeeded, but they wanted to build a gas pipeline from West Texas to the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay.
And the gas pipeline was wound up running through the Texas Hill Country, and we have like a lot of like, aquifers and a lot of like precious land and all that stuff that. We have a lot of like very like precious land and aquifers and a lot of like clean water and a lot of reservoirs in that hill country, and there was like a big environmental debate about that because the environmental impact study that they conducted in terms of how they did this pipeline was a little questionable, and they were utilizing eminent domain to just run the pipeline through people's land without any consideration for what they were going through. And then the state of Texas passed a law saying that it's now like a third-degree felony to protest the construction of a critical infrastructure project at the site, punishable by up to 10 years in prison, which our communist governor, Greg Abbott, signed into law. And the thing with the Kinder Morgan stuff, and I understand, like, you need oil, you need natural gas, you need all that stuff. I'm not trying to, like, criticize all that. But I do think that should be dependent upon the will of the people in that area. And nobody in like San Marcos or Blanco or in that entire Hill Country region wanted a gas pipeline going through their land because of the water, because of like the water supplies that it went through. Mm-hmm. So I just want to know what your take on that was, and if you think it's okay for a private oil company to use eminent domain to like build a critical infrastructure project when like you're opposed to private companies using it for toll roads and whatnot. Because my personal opinion is, I don't think that anybody should use eminent domain unless there's a majority consensus of the people within that area for the greater good.
Well, I don't know a great deal about that project, but there's a couple things. One, if they're being compensated for that coming through their land handsomely. I mean, from what I understand,
but you better
people
be
have that.
Sure.
They are. But I think they should be sensitive to the people. Absolutely. Listen to the people and figure it out. And then the people whose land and in that area, they need to also consider a couple things. If you take that pipeline and you bury it, of course on top of it can be vegetation and grass, and there's going to be a fence to keep people out and keep it safe and all that. And it's out of sight, out of mind, and there's a precious natural resource coming through there. What saved us from the winter storm was natural gas.
No,
right?
I understand
we had to have
that.
it. Now, the other thing is, let's say that's not the option. We don't want that. The other thing to calculate is how many train loads is going to have to come down that same path and how often. So which is better for the environment? This pipe under the ground that should totally protect water. We should not do anything to contaminate water, but if they can do it in a safe way, and then we don't have constant transport of trains, we don't have constant transport of trucks on the roads, is that more environmentally friendly having it in the ground than having above ground on rail and on road going back and forth nonstop? And so that's just something that people would have.
But we could have
weigh.
also rerouted that. We could have rerouted that pipeline for like maybe a couple $100 million, which is like the cost of a few days of doing business for Kinder. You know what I mean? And you had a company that didn't even want to negotiate. Yeah. So I just wanted to know what your take on that was, because I really think that when it comes to being a conservative, you got to respect property rights.
Sure.
Pretty much at all costs, and it's like the landowner comes first is how I look at it.
Sure. And that's why they get paid. I think there's been some protections put in to help make sure that if they had to have their land taken, that they're compensated, and hopefully appropriate. I mean, that's
hopefully, definitely. There's no hope that better be appropriate. Right? That's got to be as a conservative lawmaker who's a firebrand that's really shaking things up. That's got to be a thing that you better be like.
But I'll say on the deal, I don't know what deal people got, but you hope they're taken care of. Hope it's we're sorry. We feel like we have to do this for our interests to protect people, to make sure we have the resources we need to keep electricity, keep gas in cars, whatever. You just hope that it's fair to the people.
No, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
100% understand that, and I think that I think that individual people and landowners should have, in that particular situation, been given a greater voice in terms of that pipeline. Because I went to the state legislature, and there were a bunch of conservative landowners that were pissed about how that pipeline was being routed, and they got no voice.
Okay.
And so that I just want to bring that to your attention.
Okay. I appreciate it.
And I was even trying to get stop. I was working on these with these union groups to stop that pipeline from running through the hill country, and I mean there are people with Confederate flags on their houses that were mad that they had to have this pipeline going through their property. Yeah. So I think that the state and the legislature, before you were there, right, just did a really bad job of listening to the concerns of landowners when it comes to these projects. And I feel from researching you're going to do a much better job than these fake fucking rhinos, that you replaced.
I do care.
Yeah,
I do care.
But I just want to bring that to your attention because
concerns.
There's a new conservative movement that took place throughout this as a result of this pandemic. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
Yeah. People wanting more freedom and liberty, and they see it. What we talked about, how it affects their business. People want to take care of their family. They want to take care of themselves and live their life, and they're not able to do it right now in a lot of ways.
Yo, what do you think about these COVID lockdowns, man? Because I'm not gonna lie, man. I used to vote blue, pretty much down the ballot. I used to vote blue, pretty much, right? Mm-hmm. And I phone banged for Bernie Sanders in 2016. I voted for that guy in the primary, right? I was, in a lot of ways, I was pretty far left on a lot of ideologies. Mm-hmm. But then COVID hit and these lockdowns hit, and then I saw these small businesses getting decimated while Amazon and Walmart and all these mega corporations were consolidating the markets and all this stuff. And the whole the gaslighting and the nonstop lying by the corporate media, it caused me, and I'm not the only one saying this, Brian, I went red all down the ballot because of how mad I was by this whole COVID stuff. And I'm not the only. I'm sure you've heard this from a lot of other people.
Oh yeah,
right.
Well, remember how it started, right? We were worried that 60, 70, 80% of the population was going to die. The numbers we had of how many people were going to die if we didn't lock down, wear a mask, and all that. And that's all they talked about at the beginning. I remember I was concerned. Both of my grandmothers were alive this time last year. And
both of your grandparents?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
How old are you, man?
I'm 43.
Wait, how old are your grandparents?
In their 80s, almost 90.
Wow,
but one of them
all right.
passed away. It had nothing to do with COVID. She passed away in November. But I was worried I was going to lose all my family, right? And then all of a sudden, as we get going, the conversation stops talking about the number of deaths, right? We're going to shut down businesses. And I'll tell you about one of my clients in particular. We're going to shut down businesses for safety, so people don't die in the hundreds of thousands. Well, then they change. They realize that it is not as deadly as they thought. Right? It's got 99.97% survivability, and the craziest death I heard of COVID is a guy died and his blood alcohol content was 0.5.
And they said he died of COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I get that. I get that.
So, but then they change it, and now they're like, hey, we got this many cases. Well, they changed the goalpost on us, right? It was all about the number of deaths and just the almost certain death people were going to face. Then they changed it to the number of cases. Well, of course there's going to be a lot of cases. It's pretty contagious. Yeah. And thank the Lord it's not as deadly as they said.
Well, it's it's about a lifestyle choice, 80% of the people that go to the hospital for this are seriously sick, are obese.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then Krispy Kreme's offering donuts if you get a vaccine. It's almost like you're taking public health advice from people that want you dead.
Yeah.
Not to sound conspiratorial or anything, but like that's literally what it feels like. You know, like that's what's happening.
Yeah. It was, so you know, you can't go into a restaurant, right, a small restaurant, because you could get COVID. But you can go into Walmart with 200 people, you won't get COVID.
And you're around, and the sickest, unhealthiest people go to Walmart.
Yeah, and as long as we're sitting down right here, COVID does not know.
Well,
that we're here.
Fair, I'm wearing a mask.
Well,
so
you're protected. I'm not. But right now, COVID doesn't know that I'm a target. But as soon as I stand up, I'm a target.
You're a target.
Yeah, and also the masks aren't that effective. 2 or 3 weeks ago, the CDC, and actually a year ago, we were trying to tell our office, like my employees, how we're going to handle the mask, and we found conflicting evidence on the CDC website of what to do with masks. Well, 2 or 3 weeks ago, they did a study. It showed that if you wore an N95 mask and you wore it perfect, and you didn't take it off and wore a new one every day, it was 1.5% effective. And their analysis of that is masks work, they're great. And I'm like, 1.5% effective? That's not very high. It doesn't seem like they work all that well.
No, well, they work great for eliminating dissent, creating mental illness, making people more dependent on the government, creating an unhealthier society that's more dependent upon big pharma and, you know, Bill Gates funded initiatives. So they work phenomenal. What do you mean?
Oh yeah, it's the other thing that really bothered me in this is anytime we got sick in the past when I was little or whatever, doctors would give me medicine to help me. Oh, okay, we want to get ahead of this, right? Okay, you got this, we're seeing this problem. Here's medicine. They're aggressive and they attack it to help keep you healthy, right? With COVID, they just told people to go home. And if it gets worse, go to the ER. They weren't giving medicine. They weren't giving hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin. And one of the interesting things about ivermectin, there's a guy that testified before Congress. And what he said is in Argentina, there was 1,200 nurses, okay? Ivermectin won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2014 to help with ringworms. But they found out it also helps with COVID. And here's what they did. They gave 800 nurses ivermectin. Not one of them got COVID. And they worked in COVID.
Listen, I was taking nurses on my pedicab because they were all there, like to do like the COVID emergency work in the summer. Yo, they were more worried about Bill Gates than they were about the virus. Like I'm not even joking around with you. So like you know, when people are saying, oh, the medical experts are saying this and this and that, I'm like, I got a whole bunch of like medical experts, right? Like, because if you're a nurse or a doctor, like you got to be, you're smarter than the average bear when it comes to this virus. And if you're not upset because I'm wearing this mask, you know what I mean? And you're not that worried about the virus and you're talking to me about Bill Gates and you're starting it off, like, maybe they're lying to us. But the point is, like, you see all this stuff. They're trying to do these vaccine passports and all that stuff. And I don't know, like, how, and we only have a few minutes left, so I want to wrap this up. Like, how do we protect, like, our medical freedoms, man? Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
What's the state doing? What are you guys doing to ensure that, like, while we're in Texas, at least we still feel like we're in the United States, Brian?
We have to fight for our liberties. We have to stand up. And I'll tell you one thing I'm doing. A little sneak peek. I don't care. We're actually going to be submitting language to get a bill filed to ban vaccine passports.
Good. Okay.
Now
we're after Florida's doing that too, which is
So we're working on that. The problem is we're after the filing deadline. So I'm going to have to get special permission from the House to accept that. But I am going to do that. I am going to try.
Okay. Then
it's a great idea.
How do we as people like get on board with that? And how do we also like? You saw Governor Abbott acted like a bit of a tyrant, just like our fucking mayor did. Sorry for the bad language, but this is what happened. You know, and there honestly, like the ineptitude of our governor these past 9 months, there's a very real possibility in the influx of Californians and New Yorkers and people from like these failed coastal cities coming in. Like, there's a real possibility Texas could go blue. And the way the Democratic Party is going, man, these guys are not about working people. This is neoliberal fascism. I'm sorry if I'm sounding like a kook, but it's what it is, right? Like, there's a real possibility that we could have a Democrat governor in 2 years.
It's possible.
No, it's not possible. It's probably more likely than possible considering who our governor is. You know, and I hate to say this, but, like, what do we do to, like, we got to limit the emergency powers of our governor. We got to do that now. Like, what are you guys doing, man? Like, what's the plan with that?
So the Senate has what I think are the better bills to curb executive powers. I haven't heard where they are. I think they're moving, and I like them. The House has presented what they call House Bill 3, and it seems really problematic. It's basically codifying a bunch of the decisions that Governor Abbott made in the past year, and it's creating this this code of pandemic emergency items where he can do these things and maybe even have executive orders to have the effect of law. And I don't agree with that at all. I'll be fighting against that because we're supposed to be a representative republic. We're supposed to elect people like myself, 150 of us, to represent our district and stand and fight, not one person making a decision. And that's important to do that in the good times and in the bad times. We don't have laws just when days are good. We have laws that we do anytime. That's what the Constitution's supposed to help us with, is how to handle and make right decisions. And one person making a decision is not the right decision for Texans at all.
Never. It's not the right decision for Americans. It's not the right decision for Austinites. It's not the right decision for anybody. But anyway, Bryan, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to talk to me. It means so much, man. Like, you're a state representative. You got a great suit on.
Happy to meet you.
No, of course. And you took time out of your schedule to talk to somebody who drives a pedicab. So I appreciate that to no end. So, guys, Bryan Slaton, ladies and gentlemen.